What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses sits down for what should be a lighthearted late-night interview, only to have it spiral into one of the most uncomfortable moments in talk show history? Tonight, we're breaking down the interview that everyone is talking about, the moment that left the studio audience in complete silence, and the exchange that made Angelina Jolie do something she's never done before on live television. Before we get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened here, because this situation is way more complex than it appears on the surface. So let's set the scene. Angelina Jolie walks onto the Tonight Show stage, and right from the start, you can tell something feels different. There's this energy in the air, this tension that you can't quite put your finger yet. Jimmy Fallon does his usual enthusiastic greeting. The audience is clapping. Everything seems normal on the surface. But if you watch closely, and I mean really closely, Angelina's smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. She sits down, crosses her legs, and there's this moment where she just looks at Jimmy with this expression that's hard to read. Jimmy starts off with what seems like a safe question. He says, "So Angelina, it's great to have you back on the show. Last time you were here, we talked about your work as a director. Tonight, I want to dive into something a bit different. You've been in the public eye for over 2 decades now, and I'm curious, how do you deal with all the scrutiny that comes with that level of fame?" Now, this seems innocent enough, right? But watch Angelina's reaction. She pauses, just for a second, and you can see her jaw tighten slightly. She responds, "Well, Jimmy, I think that's an interesting way to start this conversation. When you say scrutiny, what exactly are you referring to? Because I've noticed that male actors rarely get asked how they deal with being watched constantly. They get asked about their craft, their projects, their artistic choices. But somehow, when it's a woman sitting in this chair, the conversation always seems to drift toward how difficult it must be to simply exist in the public space." The audience goes quiet. You can hear it in the recording. That shift in energy. Jimmy laughs, but it's that nervous laugh, the one he does when he's not quite sure if someone is joking or being serious. He tries to recover. No, that's not what I meant at all. I just think that someone with your level of fame, the intensity of it, must be challenging to navigate. I mean, you've been on magazine covers. There are constant stories. And I thought it would be interesting to hear your perspective on that. Angelina leans back in her chair, and this is where you can really see her shifting gears. She says, "My perspective is that I've spent 20 years building a career as an actress, a director, a humanitarian. I've worked in conflict zones. I've directed films that tackle serious social issues. I've raised 6 children while maintaining a career that I'm proud of. And yet, when I sit down for interviews, there's always this underlying assumption that the most interesting thing about me is how I handle attention. Don't you find that reductive?" Jimmy's smile is starting to look strained now. The band members behind him are completely still, and you can see the camera operators glancing at each other. This is not going the way anyone expected. Jimmy tries to pivot. Of course, your humanitarian work is incredible. Truly. I actually wanted to ask you about your recent trip too." He pauses, clearly trying to remember his notes. "To the refugee camps. That must have been eye-opening. And here's where Angelina really starts to show her frustration. She interrupts him, which is something you rarely see on late-night television. She says, "You wanted to ask me about it, or your producers put it on a card for you to read. Because I've got to be honest, Jimmy, and I don't mean this as a personal attack, but I've done this circuit enough times to know when someone has actually engaged with my work versus when they're just checking boxes on an interview list." The audience is dead silent now. Some people are looking at each other, confused about whether they should laugh or not. Jimmy's face flushes, and he does this thing where he touches his tie, which is apparently his tell when he's uncomfortable. He says, I think that's a bit unfair. We do our research on every guest who comes on this show. I know about your work with the United Nations. I know about your films. Angelina nods slowly, but there's no warmth in it. "Okay," she says, "then let's talk about the film I'm actually here to promote. Let's talk about the 3 years I spent developing this project. The challenges of getting funding for a story that doesn't fit into a neat Hollywood formula. The incredible cast I worked with, many of whom are first-time actors from the communities we were portraying. Let's talk about the cinematographer's vision, the score, the editing process. Let's have a real conversation about the work." Jimmy shifts in his seat, and you can tell he's trying to regain control of the interview. "Absolutely," he says. "The film is getting incredible reviews. Critics are calling it your most ambitious work yet. What drew you to this particular story?" This is where Angelina's tone changes slightly. She's still controlled, still measured, but there's an edge to her voice now. "What drew me to it," she says, "is that it's a story that needs to be told. It's about people who are rarely given a voice in mainstream cinema. It's about systemic issues that people would rather ignore than confront. And honestly, Jimmy, it's exhausting to create work like this. To pour everything you have into a project that matters, only to sit on couches like this one and have to defend why it exists in the first place." Jimmy tries to interject, "I'm not asking you to defend it. I think it's great that you're telling these stories. But Angelina continues, talking right over him. You say it's great, but do you know what the story is actually about? Have you watched the film? Because I've sat through enough of these interviews to recognize when someone has seen the work, versus when they've just read the press notes. And I'm tired. Jimmy, I'm really tired of pretending that these conversations have substance when they don't. The tension in the studio is palpable now. You can see audience members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The cameras are still rolling, capturing every second of this increasingly awkward exchange. Jimmy tries once more to lighten the mood, which is his instinct. It's what he does. He says, well, I confess, I haven't seen it yet, but that's why you're here. To tell us about it, to make us want to see it. And Angelina just looks at him. It's this long, steady look that seems to go on forever. Then she says, so you invited me onto your show to promote a film you haven't watched, to have a conversation about work you haven't engaged with, and you're surprised that I'm not playing along with the usual song and dance. Do you realize how disrespectful that is? Not just to me, but to everyone who worked on this project. Jimmy's trying to laugh it off, but you can hear the desperation in his voice. Angelina, come on, we have hundreds of guests on this show. I can't watch every single movie or read every single book. That's not realistic. She nods again. That same cold nod. You're right, she says. It's not realistic. So maybe we should just be honest about what this is. This isn't an interview, it's a performance. I'm supposed to sit here, smile, tell a charming anecdote about something that happened on set, maybe make a self-deprecating joke, and then hold up the poster for the camera. That's the transaction, isn't it? My presence in exchange for publicity, and heaven forbid, I expect anything more meaningful than that. The studio has gone from uncomfortable to absolutely frozen. This is the kind of moment that producers have nightmares about. The kind of thing that can't be edited out because it's live. It's happening right now, and there's no way to stop it. Jimmy's looking off camera, probably at his producers, clearly hoping for some kind of guidance or commercial break. But they're still rolling. He tries one more time, his voice a bit softer now. Look, I'm sorry if I've offended you. That genuinely wasn't my intention. I have a lot of respect for you and your work. Can we start over? Angelina considers this for a moment. The camera zooms in slightly on her face, and you can see her weighing her options. Then she says, here's the thing, Jimmy, I don't think you meant to be offensive. I think this is just how the machine works, and you're a cog in that machine. Just like I am when I agree to do these appearances. But I'm at a point in my life where I'm questioning why I continue to participate in something that feels increasingly hollow. Every time I sit on one of these couches, I'm making a choice to engage with a system that values everything except the actual work. Jimmy opens his mouth to respond, but Angelina keeps going. And before you tell me that I'm taking this too seriously, or that I should lighten up, or that this is just entertainment, let me ask you something. If you spent 3 years of your life creating something you believed in, something that cost you sleep and peace of mind and time away from your children, wouldn't you want the people discussing it to at least know what it is? Wouldn't you expect that basic level of professional courtesy? Jimmy finally responds, and his voice has lost that cheerful tone he's famous for. He says, you're absolutely right, and I apologize. I should have watched your film, but Angelina, with all due respect, you knew what this show was when you agreed to come on. Nobody forced you to be here, and there it is. The gloves are coming off. Now, Angelina sits up straighter, and her voice gets quieter, which somehow makes it more intense. She says, you're correct. I did agree to come on, and that's exactly what I'm questioning. Why do any of us agree to this? What if the cost of playing this game is too high? The audience doesn't know how to react. Jimmy says, but millions of people watch this show. People who might not otherwise hear about your film will hear about it. Isn't that worth something? Angelina says, is it though? I've been doing this for 2 decades. I come on shows like this, I smile, the clip goes viral, and then what? Do they actually go see the film, or do they just consume me as content and move on? Jimmy's getting frustrated. He says, so what are you suggesting? That actors shouldn't promote their projects, because that seems pretty cynical. Angelina responds, I'm suggesting that maybe the format itself is broken. Someone needs to say this out loud, because the emperor has no clothes. Jimmy, this whole system is built on pretense, and everybody knows it. Jimmy runs his hand through his hair. He says, okay, you want a real conversation. You're part of Hollywood's elite. You've benefited from this system. Isn't there something hypocritical about using this platform to complain about it? The audience gasps. Jimmy Fallon doesn't usually go there, but Angelina's pushed him to a point where he's pushing back. Angelina's expression doesn't change. She says, you think this system gave me everything. It gave me an eating disorder at 19. It labeled me difficult when I asked for fair pay. It gave me constant scrutiny of my personal life, my body, my choices as a mother. I've earned the right to criticize a system that's taken as much from me as it's given. Jimmy looks stunned. He says quietly, I didn't mean to diminish what you've been through. Angelina continues, my experience isn't unique. talk to any woman in this industry, but I'm in a position where I can speak freely now. Most people can't. I did that for years. Played the game, but I'm tired of pretending. Jimmy says, so what do we do now? Angelina looks at the camera. She says, maybe we decide what we actually value, substance or performance. Real conversations are messy. They don't fit into neat segments, but they're the only way anything changes. Jimmy tries to lighten the mood. He says, well, this has certainly been memorable. Angelina doesn't smile. She says, or will this just become another viral clip? More content to be consumed and forgotten. That's my fear, that even this will be repackaged as entertainment. Jimmy finally says, is there anything you want to promote? Angelina is quiet for a moment, then she says, I want people to think critically about what they consume, ask questions, and if you care about storytelling that matters, support work that challenges you. Jimmy nods. That's great advice. Angelina Jolie. Everyone. But Angelina stands up. She starts removing her microphone. Jimmy looks panicked. He says, wait, we haven't gone to commercial yet. Angelina hands her microphone to a stage. She says, I think I've said what I needed to say. Jimmy stands too, trying to salvage it. He says, Angelina, please, just sit back down. She turns to face him, her voice steady. That's the problem, Jimmy. You keep saying we can make this work. But the issue isn't the execution, it's the entire premise. I can't sit here and pretend this serves any purpose beyond feeding the machine. Jimmy's voice rises, desperate now. He says, Angelina, I understand you're upset, but we're live right now. Can we please just finish this conversation? She shakes her head. She says, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Even now, your concern isn't about the substance. It's about the optics. You want me to sit back down so we can pretend this didn't happen? But I'm not interested in making people comfortable anymore. The audience is completely silent. Some have their phones out, recording. The camera operators don't know whether to keep rolling or cut away. Jimmy's voice softens. He says, help me understand what you want here. What would make this conversation meaningful? Angelina stops. She turns back to face him. She says, it's too late for that. What I want is for people watching this to recognize what just happened. I want them to see how we dance around real issues, how we prioritize comfort over truth. And I want them to ask themselves if that's really what they want. Jimmy says, so this is you making a point. Angelina replies, it's me being honest. Maybe for the first time in one of these interviews. I realized I couldn't participate in this charade one more time. Yes, walking off is dramatic. Yes, it will be talked about. But at least it's real. Someone in the audience starts clapping. Slow claps that echo through the studio. Then a few more join in. Not everyone, but enough to be noticeable. Jimmy looks at the audience, then back at Angelina. He says, I don't know what to say. Part of me thinks you're right, and part of me thinks this is unfair. We're just trying to entertain people. Angelina's voice is gentler now. She says, I know you're not the enemy, Jimmy. That's what makes this complicated. You're a good person, but good people can still participate in systems that are broken. Sometimes it takes something uncomfortable to make people pay attention. Jimmy takes a deep breath. He says, okay, I hear you. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry this interview didn't go the way you hoped. Angelina nods. She says, and I'm sorry for putting you in this position. But change doesn't happen when we all stay comfortable. Jimmy asks, so what happens now? Angelina says, I think I've said everything I need to say. The film I came to promote is about people who refuse to be silenced. I would be a hypocrite if I didn't live those values myself. So yes, I'm leaving. She turns and walks toward the stage exit. The cameras follow her. Jimmy just stands there, watching. As she reaches the edge of the stage, she pauses. She doesn't turn around, but she speaks loud enough for everyone to hear. She says, to everyone watching this, you deserve better. Better conversations. Better media. Don't settle for surface level. Demand more. Then she's gone. Off the stage, behind the curtain. The studio remains silent. Jimmy stands alone, the empty chair beside him. He looks into the camera. He says, well, I don't think anyone expected that. Angelina Jolie just walked off this show. To everyone watching, we invited her here with the best intentions. Clearly, that didn't happen the way any of us planned. And maybe that's okay. Maybe sometimes things don't go according to plan. I don't know if I agree with how she handled this, but I respect her passion. Maybe she's right that we need better conversations. The audience claps awkwardly. Jimmy tries to smile. He says, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a musical performance. Stick around. The camera cuts to commercial. But you know that control room is absolute chaos. This isn't just a talk show moment, this is a cultural moment. Whether you think Angelina was right to walk off, or whether you think she was out of line, she succeeded in one thing. She made people pay attention. She created a moment people will remember that will spark conversations about celebrity interviews, about authenticity versus performance. The film she came to promote will definitely get attention now, though probably not in the way her publicist hoped, and Angelina herself will likely face questions about this night for a long time to come. Jimmy will probably be fine. But this interview will follow him to dot the audience. Just witnessed something rare in our heavily produced media landscape. They saw someone break the format, reject the script, and prioritize their own integrity. Whether that was admirable or self-indulgent is up for debate. But it was undeniably real. The reactions were predictably divided. Some praised Angelina for refusing to play along with a system she sees as hollow. Others criticized her for being ungracious. Think pieces were written. Hot takes were tweeted. Everyone had an opinion. But maybe that's exactly what Angelina wanted. Not to be right, but to start a conversation. To make people uncomfortable enough that they have to think about issues they usually ignore. The entertainment industry runs on relationships, on people playing by the rules. What Angelina did was break those rules in a very public way. And that's the ultimate question this interview raises. What are we willing to risk for our principles? At what point do we stop playing the game and start changing the rules? These aren't easy questions, but they're questions worth asking. So here we are at the end of this breakdown. You've heard the whole story. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep covering these moments where entertainment intersects with something deeper. And drop a comment below answering this question. Do you think Angelina Jolie was right to walk off the show, or did she cross a line? Let me know what you think.